Let's talk joints. Chapter 9 is joints. Joints are also known as articulations. And we're going to talk about the different types of joints, where we might find some of these joints, and what they mean for your body and movement. Joints are rigid elements of the skeleton. Your skeleton meets at joints or articulations. Joints, articulations, same thing. The Greek root artho means joint. Okay? Joints are structured to enable the resistance to crushing, tearing, and other forces that you put your body through. This is anatomy, so a lot of what we do is classification. So one of the ways that we can classify joints are based on their function or their structure. T-R-E, that's how you spell. Their structure or their function. Okay? Functional classification is based on the amount of movement seen in the joint. Okay? Synarthroses are immovable joints. Those are things that do not move. Those are things like sutures. That's all I've got. They're sutures. Sutures are immovable joints, joints that do not move. Okay? Next, we've got amphiarthroses. And amphiarthroses are slightly movable joints. That's going to be like between your atlas and axis, there's some slightly movable joints. Some stuff in your neck, your jaw, your temporomandibular joint is a slightly movable joint. Okay? And then last, we have diarthroses. Bro, don't play me, please. There's an I there. Okay, I guess I'm writing it below. Diarthroses. And diarthroses are freely movable joints. Those are the joints that you mostly see in your appendicular skeleton. All synovial joints are diarthroses. I will say it again. All synovial joints are diarthroses. Okay? So that is the functional classification that we give to joints. The structural classification is based on a few things. First is going to be the material that binds the bones together. The presence or absence of a joint cavity. Those are going to be your main structural things, okay? The structural classifications of joints include fibrous joints, cartilaginous joints, and synovial joints. Bro. Just does not like that spot for some reason. Okay. There are different types of joints within each of these structural classifications. Okay. See what I just said? Fibrous joints. There's 3 types of fibrous joints. You got sutures, those don't move at all. You've got syndesmoses, and you've got gomphoses. The only place that you're going to see gomphoses are in your mouth. Those are your gums. Those are the joints between your gums and your teeth. Gomphoses. Synchondrosis, symphysis, those are both made out of cartilage. They are cartilaginous joints. And then synovial joints are going to be every other joint that you think of. And we'll talk about those synovial joints in a lot more detail. Okay? So, fibrous joints are bones that are connected by a fibrous connective tissue. What does that mean? It is a connective tissue that has fibers in it. What does that look like? That's going to be your dense regular, your dense irregular, any of your connective joints. Since we are talking about attaching something from one bone to another, it's probably going to be a dense regular, and that one's full of collagen. Right? These fibrous joints do not have a joint cavity. The types are going to be sutures. I know I skipped something. Syndesmoses and gomphoses. Stop. I'm so irritated. Okay. Based on what you know about sutures, are these fibrous joints going to be movable or immovable? Immovable. For the most part, they don't move. That hair, it don't move. That was a meme. That was a joke. Y'all didn't get it. You're too young. It's fine. Okay? Sutures, let's talk about them. Sutures are tightly bound with just a little bit of fibrous tissue. You're usually only going to see them in the bones of the skull. Bless you. When you're a kid, your bones are not fully put together. That's why they say don't poke the top of a baby's head. It's because those sutures have not fully formed yet. Those bones are not all set together yet, so you can straight poke right into their brain. You don't want to poke into a baby's brain. It'll stunt their development hard. Okay? Don't poke the top of babies' heads. It's what we call a fontanelle. Okay? Fibrous tissue ossifies in middle age. So in your 40s, 50s-ish, they completely close off, and then we call them synostoses. Bro. Sin. I'm so sad. Synostoses. Okay? Makes sense, though. You see osteo, you think bone. You see osteo, you think bone. Syndesmoses. Syndesmoses are bones that are exclusively connected by ligaments. Ligaments are pieces of connective tissue that connect bone to bone. A tendon connects muscle to bone. Okay. The amount of movement that a syndesmose can do depends on the length of the fibers of the ligaments. So, for example, the tibiofibular joint, is an immovable synarthrosis. And the interosseous membrane is going to be a freely movable diarthroses. Okay, don't forget these syndesmoses are just a type of fibrous joint. So fibrous, R-O-U-S, joint. Same as sutures. Sutures are also a fibrous joint. Okay? Just because they are a fibrous joint does not mean that they cannot also be a diarthroses, a amphiarthroses, etc. They are usually going to be minimally movable. Okay? But I've always said there's always an exception. Okay? The last fibrous joint we're going to talk about is the gomphoses. And that's literally just your teeth hanging out in the sockets of your gums. They have a little ligament that connects them, the bone to the bone, the periodontal ligament. Okay. Only place that you're going to see gomphoses is in your mouth. With your shiny teeth in you. Shiny teeth, shiny teeth. Okay? So your fibrous joints are going to be sutures, syndesmoses, and gomphoses. Okay? Now we're going to start talking about cartilaginous joints. There they are, your fibrous joints. Sorry, one more slide about that. Your suture, your syndesmoses, this little ligament holding that together. Oh, tibiofibular joint, that's going to be a joint between your tibia and your fibula. Biologists are not creative. And then your gomphoses, that's just your teeth. Cartilaginous joints are bones that are united by cartilage. Okay. Before it was fibrous connective tissue, now it's cartilage. They are going to lack a joint cavity. No joint cavity for them, and there are two types. You're going to hate me. Synchondroses and a symphysis. And symphyses, sorry. All right, you see con, C-H-O-N, you think cartilage. Synchondroses is a cartilage-based joint. Symphysis is another cartilage-based joint. What's a symphysis that have talked about made up of fibrocartilage? Don't worry, I'll tell you. It's the pubic symphysis. Okay, the pubic symphysis is they keep your two hip bones together, and that's made up of cartilage. Okay, cool. Synchondroses are going to be made by hyaline cartilage. Symphyses are going to be made by fibrocartilage. Cool? Okay. Like I said, in synchondroses, hyaline cartilage is what makes that joint. You're going to find these in places like the epiphyseal plate, also known as the growth plate, and in the joints between your first rib and your sternum. Okay. You know that your bones start off as being cartilage, and then over time, as you get older, as you grow, that cartilage is replaced by bone. That's that endochondral ossification that I briefly mentioned last time we were here. Okay. That cartilage gets pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until it can get pushed no more, and then that eventually that growth plate that is made up of that hyaline cartilage, for lack of a better term, seals, and then you are done growing. That once that growth plate stops moving, you are done growing. Okay? Symphyses are going to be hanging out in between bones, obviously. And they're made of fibrocartilage. They resist tension and compression. They are slightly movable, but mainly they provide strength and flexibility. Okay? That fibrocartilage, you're going to see that in your intervertebral discs and in your pubic symphysis. Most of the time, hyaline cartilage you will see on heavily moving joints. All right. Cool? Synovial joints are going to be your most movable type of joint. Movable. All synovial joints are diarthroses. And each of these synovial joints is going to contain a fluid-filled cavity that is known as, anyone want to take a wild guess as to what it's called? That is found in the synovial cavity. Because biologists are what? Not creative. That synovial cavity is filled with synovial fluid made by your synovial joints, which are just very movable joints. Okay? Articular cartilage is going to be cartilage that you that is covered with articular cartilage is going to cover your bones, the ends of long bones usually. Okay, it is made with hyaline cartilage. And it absorbs a lot of compression. Okay, we're talking now about overall general structure of a synovial joint. Different synovial joints will have some variation to them here and there, but for the most part, all synovial joints will have these few things: articular cartilage, a joint cavity, articular, synovial, all the same thing. Joint cavity, articular cavity, synovial cavity are all the same thing. They are unique to synovial joints because that cavity is where a small amount of synovial fluid grow. No, you'll won't stop that. Fluid hangs out. And that synovial fluid acts to lubricate your joints. Partly. It also does other stuff, but we'll talk about that later. All right. This joint cavity, the articular cavity, is enclosed with two layers. The fibrous layer, which is made of dense, irregular connective tissue, which just kind of helps to strengthen the joint, right? You want your joints to be able to move in all kinds of directions, and that's important for a freely movable joint, right? Okay. And then you have the synovial membrane. Thought you were going to go get away from that word synovial, which is some pieces of loose connective tissue proper. Okay. That synovial membrane will cover the internal joint surfaces and make synovial fluid, bro. I think I have an image of these coming up somewhere. Okay. Get out of here with all that. Synovial fluid is a viscous fluid, pretty similar to raw egg whites. It is a filtrate from your blood. You got that from your blood. And it contains a bunch of glycoproteins that are secreted by fibroblasts. You thought you were done with fibroblasts. Guess what? They back. You are going to want to know that the glycoproteins made in synovial fluid are made by fibroblasts. And weeping lubrication is just putting pressure on your joints and pushing that synovial fluid into and out of the articular cartilage. Like motor oil, but for your elbow. Literal elbow grease. Not really, but close enough. At least somebody laughs at my jokes. I appreciate that. The pity laugh is almost worse. Reinforcing ligaments. Guess what they do? They're going to reinforce a joint. They're just going to help to support that joint. Okay? They're going to be thickened parts of that fibrous layer of the articular capsule. So they are a part of the joint itself. Sometimes you will find them outside of the capsule. We call those extracapsular. Capsular ligaments. And sometimes they are internal to the capsule, and we call those intracapsular ligaments. Extracapsular and intracapsular. Like, for example, your knee has a bunch of ligaments that are surrounding it. You've heard of someone tearing their ACL, their anterior crucial ligament? They also have a PCL, a posterior crucial ligament. Those are capsular ligaments. They're extracapsular, but that's the thing. Okay? Cool? Cool. Your synovial joints are heavy with sensory nerves. Okay? There's a ton of sensory nerves. And for the most part, they are going to detect pain. Receptors that detect pain are called nociceptors. Don't ask me how to spell it. I don't know. Nociceptors. I'm pretty sure that's not how you spell it, but it's close enough. Okay. Nociceptors, the ones that detect pain, are going to keep you from overextending your joints. They're going to monitor how much your capsule is being stretched. Okay. They also have a very rich blood supply. All right. Most of them are going to supply the synovial membrane. That makes sense because synovial fluid is a blood filtrate, so there has to be quite a bit of blood around it to start making that synovial fluid. Lots of capillary beds, lots of major nerves and blood vessels hanging out in those synovial joints. Cool? This is a general synovial joint, okay? So you've got your bones, right? You know the bones. Your articular capsule is, let's do it in red, is kind of this whole guy here. The fibrous layer is going to be the more outer layer, while the synovial membrane is going to be the inner layer. Okay? The ends of these long bones, they are covered in that hyaline cartilage. Let's do that in a different color, actually. Let's do purple. Okay? The ends of the bones, really, they are hanging out with a bunch of hyaline cartilage. You might also hear the cartilage that we were referring to at the ends of long bones talked about as articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is not necessarily the same thing as hyaline cartilage, right? But articular cartilage is made up of hyaline cartilage, okay? That's just the special name that we give it because it is hanging out right at a joint. Joints articulate. Cool? Cool. Some synovial joints contain what we call an articular disc. An articular disc. Articular discs are pretty rare. You might also hear them referred to as a meniscus. Bro, spell. Okay. You only see these articular discs in the temporomandibular joint and at the knee joint. Okay. And you only really see these in joints where the bones have really different shapes. Okay. Where is the temporomandibular joint? Don't tell me until then. You got me? Great. Synovial joints, they lubricate. Friction could cause these joints to overheat, which would then destroy the joint tissue. Synovial joints are often subjected to compressive forces, and that's why we get so much of that weeping lubrication in between those synovial joints. Cool? Okay. So because joints are constantly being stretched and pulled and compressed and moved in so many different ways, there are a lot of factors that come into helping to stabilize these joints. Okay. One of the things that helps to stabilize synovial joints is going to be an articular surface. The shape of the articular surface determines what kind of movement is possible within that joint. Okay? You will find that there are, I'm literally about to get into it in a second. I'm going to stop talking. They don't play a huge role in stability, but they do at least inform how much or where a joint can move. Okay? Exceptions to that are going to be your hip joint, your elbow, and your ankle. Next thing that's going to influence stability of your synovial joints is going to be ligaments. All those ligaments that you have within the extracapular ligaments, the intracapular ligaments, all of that stuff. Usually you're going to find those either on the medial or inferior side of a joint, so either on the inside or towards the back. And they're going to prevent things like excessive abduction. Abduction, like stealing babies? No. Abduction is taking a body part away from the axis. Abduction. We take that kid as we want it. I'm going to abduct, take that kid away from its family. You'll find out very quickly that we will then adduction, that kid back to its family because I don't want it. Get me away from that screen. Okay? Abduction, taking the kid from its family. I've decided I wanted that child. It's mine now. Adduction, I actually don't want all that smoke. Give that baby right back. Okay? And I'll talk about those in a second. Lateral or superior ligaments, they resist adduction. So the inside and back ones prevent excessive abduction. The outside and top ones will prevent excessive adduction. Okay? Cool. So, ligaments on the anterior. Where's the anterior again? The front. So the front side of a joint are going to resist extension and lateral rotation. Ligaments on the posterior side are going to resist flexion and medial rotation. The more ligaments that we have present, usually means that the joint is going to be more stable and a lot stronger. Okay? Oops. I just want to get into movements of joints. Okay. Cool. And then the last thing that really helps to stabilize synovial joints is going to be muscle tone. Okay. Having a decent muscle tone helps to keep tension on the tendons and reinforces a lot of the movements that we make. Super important in your shoulders and your knees and the joints of your foot, especially that arch of your foot. Okay? Cool? Cool. Okay. What kind of movements do synovial joints allow? Remember, these are, I thought I was done. We still got 20 minutes left. Diarthroses. Remember, diarthroses are those highly movable joints. They're the ones that can do all kinds of stuff. There are 3 basic types of movements that our synovial joints do. The first is going to be a gliding motion. That's just one bone moving across the surface of another bone. You've got angular movements. Angular movements. And that's movement that changes the angle in between bones. That's going to be like your flexion, extension, stuff like that. And then we have rotation. Bless you. Rotation is just movement around a bone's long axis. Gliding joints, you're going to find those in between the flat surfaces of 2 bones, and those bones will just slip right across on top of each other. Okay, that's going to be things like your carpals, your wrist bones have a lot of gliding bones. That's what lets you do that kind of is these bones just gliding over each other. You can kind of feel that. If you just wiggle your arm back and forth, you can kind of feel some bones moving in there. Do it. I have to look stupid, so do you. You feel those bones kind of moving? They just kind of glide over one another, okay? Those are your carpals. Your tarsals is your ankle. And then the articular processes of your vertebrae. I'll show you, for those of you who are in my Tuesday lab, you'll see it on Tuesday. If you were there on today, you saw those articular processes. You have your superior articular processes and your inferior. Those bones just slide against each other. That'll make sense when you see what that looks like. Sorry, Tuesday. Okay, that's where you're going to find some of those gliding joints. Angular movements are going to be movements that increase or decrease the angles in between bones. These guys are paired movements, okay? So those include flexion and extension. Abduction, abduction, and adduction. And then circumduction. Okay? Flexion is going to be decreasing the angle between bones. And extension is usually going to be increasing the angle between bones. Okay? So, when homegirl here is tipping her head forward, tipping her head forward. Is that going to be flexion or extension? Let's say that we're talking about the bones that are hanging out in the front of her neck. That's going to be flexion. Okay? And so when she tilts her head all the way back, it's going to be extension. Okay? When homegirl is moving forward, when she bends forward, we're talking about the trunk here. In respective to the trunk, when she folds forward, she is doing flexion. When she moves backwards, she is doing extension. Of the trunk, let's be clear here, because if we were talking about her spinal column, her vertebral column, moving forward like this would be extension. Moving back like this would be flexion, if we were talking about the vertebral column. Okay, so it's important that you know what structure it is that we are talking about doing that movement. That will inform whether or not it is flexion, extension, if the angle between the bones is increasing or decreasing. Okay. All right. In this one, we are talking about the shoulder bone. When I move my arm like this, am I increasing or decreasing the angle between my arm and my shoulder? I am actually decreasing. I am decreasing the angle. Okay? So that's going to be flexion. Okay? This knee, I am decreasing the angle between my thigh and my leg. Okay? Also going to be flexion. This guy is extension. This is part 1. This is part 2. This is part 1. This is part 2. This is going to be extension. Okay? I talked about this one a little bit. I'm taking that kid. I want it for myself. That is abduction. I'm abducting that child. He's mine. He's coming with me. I'm taking that kid away from his family. Abduction. But then, oh no, all that kid wants to do is scream and eat and play games. And I don't want to play games with this kid. I'm going to go add that child back to their family by doing adduction. Adduction. Bro. Okay. I took the child away. I said, this is mine. I kidnapped it. I abducted that child. And I said, actually, I don't want that smoke. Let's add you back to your family. Okay? Circumduction is just moving in a circle. Circumstances, your environment. Circumference just means circle. Okay? Cool. I don't know if it's actually going to let me play this video. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And today it's looking like no. and today it's looking like no. It would just show you all of the different movements that your pectoral girdle can do. It's a lot. Your arms do a lot. They can move a lot. Have I said that? A lot? Great. Between your atlas and your axis, also known as your C1 and C2 vertebrae, you're also going to see that kind of rotation at the hip and shoulder joints. Shoulder. Okay. A couple different types of rotation. Medial rotation is going to turn towards the midline. Lateral rotation is going to go away from midline. Stuff like that. Okay. My head is going forward, right? Rotation, 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 right? My leg facing forward, medial rotation, lateral rotation. Okay? Medial faces in towards the midline, lateral faces out. Most people can't do that, right? Like all the way sideways like that. I'm hypermobile. So don't try to do that. You might hurt yourself. Okay? So that's that medial and lateral rotation right there. A body part superiorly is going to be called elevation. Like an elevator, right? Will lift you up to the top of a building so you don't have to bust your joints stopping at going up all those stairs. Depression is just moving that elevated part inferiorly. Where is inferior? Down. Inferior is down. An elevator will lift you up. Depression gonna bring you down. That was a joke. Okay. You're gonna elevate your mandible. Close that mouth. When you depress your mandible, you yap, 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 yap. Yap, 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 yap. Okay? Creates. Okay. So special movements. Non-angular movement anteriorly, that's going to be protraction. And then non-angular movement posteriorly, that's going to be retraction. You can protract your mandible. God, it's not cute, guys, but I'll show you. Ready? Bring your mandible forward. And then once you put it back where it's supposed to go, I can't retract my mandible that any farther back than it already is. But taking it from that protractor spot, you're retract. Almost not. You can protract your scapula. God. Yeah, kind of like scapula back here. So when you're kind of, you can kind of pop that scapula up and down. Okay? Protraction and retraction. That is not an angular movement, but it is movement that we care about. She did it too. Okay. Supination will rotate your forearms laterally. Pronation will rotate your forearms medially. And opposition is just moving your thumb across your palm. Okay? So this is all assuming that this person was in anatomical position. Anatomical position, my arms are by my sides, my feet are facing forward, all of that stuff. Okay? Supination, I want to pick up my bowl of soup. I have supinated. Okay? Pronation, my forearms are going to turn left medially, and I'm dumping out all that soup. First please sir, soup for the poor, supination please, give me some soup, yeah, and then, actually, that soup sucks. I'm going to pronate, pour it out, okay, pronation. I know it's a little bit of a stretch, just roll with me there, okay, supination, pronation. Opposition. Opposition. Okay? Supination, give me soup. Pronation, pour that soup out. Opposition. Okay, some special movements of the foot, inversion and eversion. Oh, Lord. Inversion, turning your foot inside. Eversion, turning your foot out. Again, I'm hypermobile. This would probably hurt most of you. Okay? Inversion turns the sole of the feet inward, medially. Eversion turns the sole of the foot out, laterally. Cool? Did y'all see that? Great. There it is again. Inversion and eversion. Oh, good. Couple more foot movements. Dorsiflexion moves your foot, allows you to do that kind of pull your foot towards your shin, right? So when you do this stretch and you pull your toes towards your shin, that is dorsiflexion. Plantar flexion is pointing your toes like a pretty ballerina so that you can stand up on your tippy toes and do your arabesque. Okay? Plantar flexion, you plant your foot into the ground and lift your heel. Plantar flexion. Dorsiflexion lifts your foot up. Okay? Cool? You will be asked about these movements. You do need to know them. Great. Dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. You thought we were done classifying. Hilarious. A couple more ways to classify joints. You can classify them based on their shape. Okay? Plane joints. Their articular surfaces are going to be flat planes. It's going to be a lot of your gliding joints. And those movements are non-axial. They do not revolve around an axis. That says any, Jesus. Okay. Your plane joints are going to be your flat joints. Okay. Non-axial. Plane joints are non-axial. They glide. Next are going to be your hinge joints. Your hinge joints, they have a cylindrical end on one bone that fits into kind of like a cup on another. Your elbow, your ankle, some of your fingers, and that movement is uniaxial. Only moves around one axis. Your elbow, and you'll see this when we talk appendicular skeleton, Your olecranon process hooks right onto the back of your humerus at the olecranon fossa. That's what lets your arm go like this, but it stops, right? You can't just, if I could, I would, but you can't just like throw your whole forearm and have it loop back and hit your armpit. That's not how it works, right? There is a little cup where it kind of sticks like that. So once it hits that, it'll stop. Moves around one axis only. Okay, that's a hinge joint. Okay? I really, truly only have a few more left. I'm going to run through them real quick. Okay, there's that hinge joint. Next is pivot joints. Pivot joints. P-I-V-O-T. They're classified as a uniaxial rotating motion. Okay. Example is that your radio-ulnar joint, the proximal one, radio-ulnar's up here, and then the atlantoaxial, your atlas axis. That lets you say, no, I don't want to learn any more anatomy. Class is over. Free me. Yeah? Okay. Pivot joints pivot. They turn. Condylar, or ellipsoid joints. Okay. Those bones do allow a little bit more movement. Side to side movement is abduction and adduction. And then the back and forth movement is going to be flexion and extension. These guys are biaxial. Meaning they move around two axes. Like your finger can go no, 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 but it can also go yes, yes, yes. No, 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 yes, yes, yes. Okay? Condylar joints. Next is saddle joints. Saddle joints have a concave and a convex surface. The side to side is abduction and adduction. The back and forth is flexion and extension. Because I can move on two axes, this is going to be a biaxial joint. And your thumb is a great example of a saddle joint. Front and back, side to side, all kinds of stuff. Looks like a saddle. Looks like a saddle is a saddle. The one that you are probably the most common with is ball and socket joints. And a ball and socket joint is exactly what you think of when you're thinking of like your shoulder joint or your hip or something like that. There is a piece that fits into something else and allows for movement. We call this guy multi-axial. There it is. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about. There's like two more. Okay. Bursa and tendon sheaths are usually going to be associated with synovial joints. Bursa is pretty much just like a closed bag full of usually some kind of fluid, and that just kind of helps to reduce friction on your joints. Okay. Bursa is a flat fibrous sac that is lined by the synovial membrane, and then a tendon sheath is just a long bursa. EATH. I tried. It doesn't want it, but you get it. It's this word, sheath. And that's what they look like. Okay. Tendon sheath, just a long bursa. And the bursa just sits right between two bones, kind of acts like a pillow to cushion those bones.